What if I told you, with all the firmness within me, that your greatest victory isn't in your future? What if everything you call a dream was already ready, finished, packaged, waiting for you to say, I do? Perhaps, at this very moment, a part of your mind is trying to resist. This seems too good to be true. But what if the problem was never that a dream was impossible, but that you learned to look in the wrong place? Most people were taught to look outside, to look for signs, to look for answers, to look for permission. But there's a secret you were never told, and it can change everything. Your victory already exists in the unseen. And as long as you continue to search only with the eyes of the body, you will remain blind to the realities only the soul sees. You don't need to struggle to create what has already been decreed on the spiritual plane. You only need to awaken to who you already are. And this awakening begins now. From an early age, you've been conditioned to believe that achievement is limited to sweat, effort, and physical endurance. But there is another kind of force, quieter, more refined, more powerful, that shapes reality with words, thoughts, and faith. This power doesn't shout, it whispers, and those who haven't learned to listen spend their lives chasing the wind. Napoleon Hill, studying the greatest builders of wealth and empires, discovered that all of them, without exception, operated on the same principle. They had already won. Even before they won, deep within them, there was a certainty that didn't depend on proof. It was as if they lived with their feet on the ground, but with their minds set on the already realized future. They acted with the conviction of those who had already seen the end of history. You might think this is just optimism, but it isn't. It's spiritual science. It's understanding that the reality that matters isn't what meets the eye, but what the mind accepts as true. And when you understand this, everything changes. Limitations begin to crumble. Justifications lose their power. The fears that once paralyzed you become small, because you stop living by logic, and you start living by faith. Not a religious faith, a living faith, a faith that moves, a faith that transforms thought into matter, vibration into result, decree into manifestation. But before living this reality, you need to correct the greatest error of all, the idea that you are not yet worthy of victory. This lie was planted little by little. Perhaps it began with someone who criticized you as a child. Perhaps with a failure that made you doubt yourself, perhaps with silent comparisons with people who always seemed more prepared, more capable, more special. And so, you began to see yourself as small, limited, trying to prove your worth. And the more you tried, the more distant the dream seemed. But here's the truth, you don't need to prove your worth to live what God has already written about you. What you need is to remember who you are. Because every soul that forgets its origins becomes sick. How many times have you seen someone successful and thought, that person has something I don't? But what if, in reality, they simply had the courage to accept who they already were? While you're still waiting for a sign to get started, life doesn't respond to what you want. It responds to what you assume you are. And as long as you see yourself as someone trying to get there, you'll keep trying forever. But when, deep down, you decide to live like someone who has already achieved it, even if nothing has changed on the outside, the world around you begins to mold itself to this new identity. And you may think, but how can I live like someone who has already won if I'm still surrounded by problems? This is where the power of the unseen comes in. You don't win because everything is perfect. You win because you decide, within yourself, that nothing outside of you has more authority than the vision God has planted in your spirit. Doubt may knock, fear may try to enter, but you close the door because your inner house now has a new owner, certainty, and this certainty is as serene as it is unshakable. It doesn't shout, it doesn't impose itself, it simply knows, and the entire universe responds to those who know, to those who don't doubt, to those who don't ask. It decrees there is a force within you that is still latent, and this force is not awakened by motivational phrases, it is awakened by awareness. When you realize that you are not what they said you were, that you are not here by chance, that you don't live to pay bills and repeat cycles, that there is a greater plan, a divine architecture, and that this plan is not activated by suffering, but by decision. The decision to stop struggling to be, and start living as you already are. When you make this decision, something changes in your perspective. Your breathing cuts, your body takes on a different rhythm, your spirit begins to command, and fear, accustomed to dictating the rules, retreats. You may think it's impossible to keep up. That reality is harsh, but who said you have to live by reality? You were created to create realities, Jesus said. If you have faith as small as a mustard seed, you can say to this mountain, move from here to there, and it will move. He didn't say, wait for the mountain to move before you believe. He said, believe first. Because in the kingdom of God, believing comes before seeing, and that's not poetry. It's spiritual structure. You need to stop repeating the old programming that says, when things change, I will change. The truth is just the opposite. When you change, everything changes. What if nothing changes? What if results take a long time? The answer is simple. Stay strong, because those who act as if they've already won don't need proof to stay on the Path true faith doesn't need evidence, it's evidence. And that's the difference between those who build castles and those who live hoping for crumbs. Those who live by faith build with invisible bricks. They start the work before the blueprint seems possible. They walk down the street as if it were theirs, even if they don't have the key yet. And the world feels it, people feel it. They don't understand why, but they come closer, they trust, they connect, because the energy of those who have already won is unmistakable. Stop living as if you're constantly being tested. You're no longer in line to receive your blessing. You're on the stage of manifestation. Every thought you have is now a painting. Every word is a stroke. Every choice is a sculpture. And when you allow yourself to live from this place, everything begins to conspire in your favor. Paths that once seemed closed open up. Opportunities begin to appear. Not by chance, but because you've begun to vibrate on the frequency of what is already rightfully yours. The frequency of certainty. The frequency of I already am. You can keep waiting for the world to recognize you, or you can make a different choice. Wake up today, look in the mirror, and declare, my victory already exists. I simply chose to live it. And in that moment, something snaps. The waiting ends. Character gives way to essence. And what was once only potential becomes power. If this resonated with you, if this awakening somehow began within you, tell me, from which city are you watching this video right now? I want to feel your presence at this very moment. Write it in the comments. Let's continue this journey together. Have you ever noticed how the reality around us often seems to follow an invisible script, as if there was something beyond the visible that guides events, shapes situations, and even selects the type of people we encounter? This silent, subtle, and absolutely precise force is your subconscious mind. And it's much more than a psychological concept. It's the field where everything is sown before it's harvested. Everything you experience in the physical world began there, as a repeated thought, as an intensified emotion, as a deeply held belief, and this completely changes how you approach life. Because if the invisible governs the visible, then true creation occurs first in the spirit, and only then in matter. Perhaps you're used to thinking you're fighting to win, when in reality your subconscious simply replicates, with absolute fidelity, what you've accepted as true within yourself. The subconscious is like a garden that doesn't question the seeds. It doesn't wonder if they're flowers or weeds. They simply germinate, and it listens to you constantly. When you say, even silently, life is hard, it obeys. When you repeat, I'm not good enough, it records it and transforms it into landscapes, experiences, and patterns. That's why victory never begins outside. It begins in the inner language you have with yourself. And this language, for the subconscious, is the law. Here's the amazing thing. Your subconscious mind doesn't distinguish between what you intensely experience and what you emotionally imagine. To your subconscious mind, both are real. This means you can deliberately and intentionally program a new reality with your thoughts, images, words, and feelings. When you act as if you've already won, you're not lying to yourself, you're shaping the truth you want to live. You're accessing a secret creation code where being precedes having. And the more you consistently align with this truth, the more the universe responds with synchronicities that seem like coincidences, but are only a confirmation. That's why those who walk with unwavering faith have a different aura. It's not arrogance, it's not illusion, it's vibration, it's frequency. These people don't need to convince anyone. They simply exist in a state that naturally attracts everything that corresponds to the reality they already live internally. And the most incredible thing is that you, too, can access this state. You, too, can awaken this power. But it isn't revealed to those who live based on doubt. It's given to those who choose to trust even when nothing seems favorable. Because for the subconscious, time doesn't matter. Respond now, and everything you vibrate today will be your field tomorrow. If you want to change your life, you need to start by changing what you cultivate in the invisible. And to achieve this, you need more than just positive words thrown to the wind. You need emotion, you need repetition, you need determination. A decree is only fulfilled when it is filled with faith. It's not enough to say, I am a winner. You need to feel what that means. You need to walk like someone who has already won. Speak like someone who has already achieved it. Choose like someone who is already living life to the fullest. This coherence between identity, emotion, and action is what transforms a phrase into reality, a dream into presence, a desire into existence. And you might ask yourself, but how can we maintain this amidst the chaos? And the answer is as simple as it is profound: by creating rituals. Every winner, consciously or subconsciously, has practices that feed their internal programming. It could be a meditation at dawn. It could be a moment of silence. It could be repeating a powerful phrase. But what matters is consistency. The subconscious submits to repetition with emotion. You don't have to be perfect. You have to be consistent. You don't have to feel strong every day. You just have to keep nurturing your new identity until it becomes natural, instinctive, inevitable. And when that happens, something changes. Your posture changes, your gaze changes, your breathing changes, your energy field transforms. People start to notice. Opportunities that once went unnoticed now present themselves clearly. Decisions that were once difficult now become obvious. External chaos may still exist, but it no longer depresses you, because you've anchored something within you that is stronger than any circumstance, and that something is called conviction. The conviction that victory isn't a place you try to get to, it's a state you accept to live in. And if you still have that nagging doubt, what if none of this works for me? Stop, breathe, and ask yourself, who's speaking now? Is it your soul or the old program that wants to keep you in the familiar zone of limitation? You are not what you feel in the moment. You are what you consciously choose to repeat. And if you repeat it with faith, with focus, and with emotion, inevitably, your world will bend to this new truth. In a world where almost everything is improvised, where most people live from reaction to reaction, there is a brutal and silent difference between those who simply desire something and those who have already decided. This difference is called clarity. And clarity isn't just knowing what you want, it's seeing, feeling, touching, with the eyes of the soul, a reality that doesn't yet exist in the eyes of the body. Clarity is the act of creating within what has not yet been born outside. It's the architect who draws the plan of the work before moving a brick. Napoleon Hill called it a well-defined main purpose. It's not a whim, it's not a "it would be nice if ... It's a non-negotiable choice. It's the vision of your victory, so clear that it becomes, from now on, the only possible path. The subconscious doesn't work with vague phrases. I want to be rich. I want to be successful. I want a better life. That's smoke. That's wind. The subconscious doesn't build with fog. It builds with instructions, with details, with clear, emotionally charged images. It needs to feel, along with you, the texture of your new life, the sound of your ideal morning, the scent of your dream home, the vibration of your bank account when you read that number that, until recently, seemed unattainable. That's not daydreaming. That's spiritual design. The invisible is malleable, and your mind is the chisel. But why does almost no one do this? Because we were trained to survive, not to plan. Most people spend their lives putting out fires, living day to day as if they were hostages of time, as if life were a river that carries you along. But the spiritual truth is different. You are the river. You are the architect. You are the source. When you draw your victory in detail and revisit it every day with emotion, it becomes more real than any circumstance. And the outside world, over time, begins to bend to your inner strength. Now stop for a moment and ask yourself, what is the exact image of your victory? Not the idealized image. Not the one you think you should have, but the real one. The one that fills your soul. How much money do you want to generate annually? Where do you live? Who is by your side? How do you feel when you wake up? What is the rhythm of your morning? What do you see from your bedroom window? What impact does your work have? How do you dress? How do you speak? How do others treat you? And above all, how does it feel to know that all of this is already yours? Clarity of vision is what separates dreamers from builders. Without it, even the most extraordinary talent is lost. You may have infinite potential, but if you don't know where you're aiming, you'll waste your energy fighting battles that aren't yours. Clarity guides you. Direction creates purpose. And purpose, when you vibrate consistently, activates latent forces within you. You begin to say no more easily. You begin to identify what is distraction and what is mission. And, above all, you begin to act like someone who already lives this reality. Even if, physically, nothing has changed yet. This is where most people fall back. Because living like a winner requires an inner integrity that few are willing to maintain. You can no longer behave as you did before. You can no longer accept invitations that don't fit your new frequency. You can no longer feed off the same conversations. Your mind begins to form a new pattern. And that, yes, will bother you. It will seem like you're distancing yourself from everything. But, in fact, you're moving closer to yourself. And it's in this strategic distancing that you create space for your new life to manifest. The question from now on should be, would the person I visualized do this? Would they think this way? Would they accept this kind of energy? Would they waste time on this kind of distraction? If the answer is no, then you know what to do. This filter is your new navigation system. With every decision, every choice, every word, you are reinforcing or erasing the image you've decided to build. And that's the most powerful thing. You have this power. You are the sculptor, you are the voice, you are the decree. The spiritual world responds to those who live with intention. And intention without clarity is noise, but clarity with emotion is a command. And every spiritual command, when sustained with discipline and faith, becomes a visible reality no matter the time, no matter the obstacles, no matter the history. The vision you cultivate within with love, focus, and presence becomes inevitable, because the universe cannot resist a spirit aligned with its mission. You don't have to wait for everything to be perfect to begin. You have to begin so that everything falls into place. And this beginning isn't in the outside world. It's within you, in the invisible, in the secret sanctuary where your most sacred thoughts reside. That's where the work begins. That's where the impossible folds. That's where your new life is sealed, not with empty words, but with daily decisions, with a silent yes, step by step, but with your gaze fixed on the image you've decided never to abandon. And now that you're faced with this living, emotional, spiritual, and detailed blueprint of your victory, there's only one real next step: protecting this vision from anything that might try to erase it. And if this message has stirred something strong in you, I want you to do this. Go to the comments and write with determination and intention: I decide to become the person who already lives this vision. Write consciously, not out of habit, because this simple act, charged with presence, is a silent signal to your subconscious that something has changed, that the wait is over, that the decision has been made, that the future is not far away. You live now. And when you reach this point in your path where your vision is clear, your mind is protected, and your discipline is rooted, you realize something that will forever change the way you walk through life. You were not meant to walk this path alone. Even the strongest spirit expands when connecting with other souls committed to the same greatness. Napoleon Hill called this the mastermind. But this phrase, far from being just an intellectual strategy, is a spiritual law. When two or more consciousnesses join in harmony and with a higher purpose, a third, invisible energy is born, more powerful, wiser, and more creative than either of them alone. It's as if heaven sends a divine spark every time two minds come together to co-create with truth and intention. You begin to realize it's not just about having the answers. It's about being surrounded by people who also live like those who have already succeeded. People who don't mock your dreams, who don't diminish your faith, who don't mock your discipline, but rather, they reinforce you, they remind you, they awaken in you the purest, the most intense, the most aligned with your essence. The mastermind isn't just made of advice, but of frequency. You feel when you're with someone that they elevate your field. Your energy is organized, your focus is sharpened, your courage is renewed. This is the magic of alignment. This is the science of multiplying spiritual power. But a mastermind isn't formed by chance, it's built with intention. It requires the maturity to learn from others, the humility to recognize your own limits, and the greatness to value what each soul carries within. Because somewhere in this world, there is someone who has exactly what you lack. And, at the same time, you carry within you a piece of heaven that completes someone's mission. It is at this point that the personal journey becomes a collective journey. And the clearer your vision, the more magnetic your field will be, because true purpose attracts another true purpose. And when two purposes intertwine, a new world is born. But even when you're surrounded by allies, there's an opposing force that will test everything you've built. It comes in the guise of failure, loss, and setback. Hill called it temporary defeat, but look, temporary, not final. The unsuspecting soul mistakes this for the end. But the mature soul knows, every apparent defeat carries within it the seed of a greater benefit. Pain becomes a teacher, failure becomes direction, loss becomes purification. Nothing is in vain, nothing is a fluke, everything contributes. And what separates the winner from the quitter is not how many mistakes they make, but what they do with their mistakes. You begin to realize that everything that hurt you, served you, everything that held you back, taught you. And in that moment, you stop asking, why did this happen to me? And start asking, what is this trying to reveal to me? This shifting question is the beginning of true mastery. It's when your consciousness shifts from victim to creator, from servant of fate to master of purpose. You begin to transform every stone into a stepping stone. And what was an obstacle becomes momentum. What was a burden becomes foundation. What was a storm becomes baptism. But the fuel that keeps this transmutation alive isn't just logic, it's desire. Not just any desire, but burning desire. That sacred obsession that beats inside you even when everything around you seems to be telling you to give up. It's the thought that returns every day, even when you try to keep quiet. It's the vision that won't leave you alone. It's the certainty that burns like fire. It's when you crave your purpose as much as a drowning man craves air. This can't be taught, it's awakened. It's the difference between would be nice and non-negotiable. Burning desire is the code that breaks all resistance. And when this desire meets discipline, clarity, and faith, procrastination dies. Fear is silenced. Others' opinions become a distant noise. Because now you are moved by a force that comes not from the ego, but from the soul. And this force is unstoppable. It lifts you up when everything tells you it's time to fall. It pushes you forward when human willpower runs out. It guides you even when everything seems dark. And that's why you keep going, not because it's easy, but because it's inevitable. And there's one last secret, a seal that transforms everything you've built into something eternal. This seal is called gratitude, but not the gratitude the world practices, but the kind that comes after the blessing. I'm talking about anticipatory gratitude, the kind that celebrates before seeing, the kind that gives thanks while it's still invisible, the kind that honors the present before it becomes visible. When you give thanks for something you don't yet have, but feel you've already received it, you send the strongest signal to the universe. You say, it's mine now. And the world responds, yes, it is. This gratitude shifts your frequency from I want to I have. It eliminates despair, it dissolves lack, and it places your soul in a state of harvest now. You're no longer trying to get there. You're living from where you've already arrived. And that, in itself, is an act of supreme faith. Living faith. Active faith. Faith that moves mountains not because it screams, but because it vibrates. You are no longer on the path to victory. You are victory itself in motion. You don't try to be. You already are. Every step is a decree. Every word is a prayer. Every decision is an altar. And your throne is already prepared now. Before I end this video, I want you to answer honestly here in the comments. Where are you viewing this message from? I want to feel your presence. I want to know what part of the world is being touched by this frequency of rebirth, power, and consciousness. Write it down. Because every comment is a spiritual anchor, a silent confirmation that you're no longer waiting. You're taking charge. And remember, you are the master of your destiny. You are the captain of your soul. Now go and act like someone who's already won.